Communism, a revolutionary idea in American history.
Communism was a revolutionary idea in the 20th century. The government and citizens of the USA reacted to this idea in different ways.
During the Great Depression in the 1930s, some citizens thought communism was the answer to our economic problems, while others thought it was a threat to our freedom. Our government reacted to communism by giving money and support to other countries fighting communism, like South Korea.
In the 1950s, there was a revolution against communism when Senator Joe McCarthy started a campaign against everyone in America who was suspected of being communist. He wanted a communist-free America. A lot of Americans liked this idea because they thought communism might take over our government. We interviewed Dr. Cleon Skousen, who was an FBI agent during the McCarthy era. He investigated people who were suspected of being communist. He also wrote this book called The Naked Communist.
Well, the McCarthy years were hard because Senator McCarthy wasn't very, he was just so mad at everybody that was on the wrong side. And so that sort of hurt his cause.
Communism is an economic and political system in which the government owns all property and all business. It is an idealist society that tries to prevent economic competition and political and economic class.
Many people don't realize what a terrible threat communism was. The communists had a third of the planet. And wherever they took over territory, they were brutal and ruthless. Oh, the cruelty of the communists was something that just amazed me when I had communists tell me how they had been treated as communists. So the senator was very disappointed. And those that were in high places decided they would destroy his image. And they attacked him and started accusing him of all kinds of things. And it did. It discredited the whole program. But anyway, the people that he asked, are you a member of the Communist Party? In the FBI, we already knew they were. And they were part of the conspiracy to overthrow the United States. But it was a strange period through which we were passing.
According to former FBI agent Cleon Skousen, Franklin Roosevelt was no enemy to communism. His wife was a socialist. In fact, he introduced some of the first socialist ideas to the government, like labor laws and Social Security.
Years later, under the Freedom of Information Act, we discovered that Harry Hopkins, Franklin D. Roosevelt's right-hand man, was a communist spy for the Soviet Union.
Now, the president surrounded himself with hardcore communists because the president liked communists. He wasn't a communist, but his wife was a socialist, and he just thought he could handle Stalin somehow. He would win him over. So in the FBI, we were in a tight spot because the president did not want us to investigate communism. We can investigate Nazism, but don't investigate the communists. We can make friends out of the communists. Well, they were threatening that they were getting into a position where they could overthrow the United States.
We interviewed Mr. Shaw, who is the head of the Communist Party in New Mexico. We interviewed him to get a communist perspective on this subject.
Franklin Roosevelt, I would say, was not a friend of communism. How would McCarthy define communism? How did McCarthy define communism? He defined it as being the enemy of the United States. That's what he said. He defined it as Joseph McCarthy felt that even the mild reforms of Franklin Roosevelt were a form of communism, that those people who favored Social Security, expansion of Social Security were communists, those people who favored labor laws were communists, anything for the improvement of the people, in his mind, were the communists.
And when the war was over, we used the Freedom of Information Act to find out who were the real spies around the president, and here his right-hand man, Harry Hopkins, was listed in Moscow as a Soviet agent. Now, the president always defended Harry Hopkins because he said he isn't a communist, he's just a socialist. He was more than a communist, he was a Soviet agent. And in the FBI, we found out that Harry Hopkins shipped to the Soviet Union half of all our uranium salts and about 12 suitcases filled with top secret documents about the atomic bomb. As a matter of fact, it's now granted that the Soviet Union never would have had an atomic bomb if it hadn't been for Harry Hopkins and the many secrets that were stolen.